Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Gittin daf Gimel. We're on our second day in our new Masechet, and
the last day until next month.
this is the last day. No, I will be teaching in person also on Thursday next week. But then that will be the last day until next month, meaning until June. But we'll have online every day. So
No, next week's a holiday.
yeah, on Friday it's going to be Shavuot. So yeah, that'll be wonderful. Okay. All right, sounds great. So here we go. So let me share my screen and let's go over what we've done so far. So the opening Mishnah referred to a requirement for an agent delivering a get in certain circumstances to state that the get was written and signed before him. Now the Gemara noted two explanations, meaning why do we need to have this one person make this statement? So Rabbah explained that we're concerned about maybe it wasn't prepared properly, and that specifically we needed to make sure that the document was written specifically for the woman being divorced. You can't write the document for this woman and then use it for another woman. So that just doesn't work. So that's why we need to make sure that it was written for this particular one. And Rava said, no, we're concerned about whether or not we're going to have somebody there to confirm the witnesses signed the get, meaning on the get itself, in addition to the text, there are signatures at the bottom of the page, and we need to make sure that those signatures are valid signatures. And so having the witness come and who delivered it to say that they are valid signatures, so that's what he is doing. So yesterday we wondered why Rabbah does not require two witnesses to deliver the get. And we explained that his concern actually is only rabbinic, and the rabbis didn't want to require two witnesses because that would minimize the risk. If we did require two witnesses, that would increase the risk of an aguna. So we did not want two witnesses because we wanted to minimize the risk of creating an aguna, namely a woman who has not gotten a get. Because if we have to have two witnesses deliver the get, so that's going to make it more difficult for the husband to do so. And as a result, he'll be separated from his wife without giving her a get, and she'll be stuck. She'll be an aguna. So now we turn to Rava, and as we pick up, we're now on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line, middle of the line. So now we're going to ask exactly the same question and actually go through the exact same conversation that we had yesterday. We're going to go through that conversation with respect to Rava. So Rava says that the reason that we require this person to say b'fanei nechtam is because there's not going to be any witnesses who can confirm these signatures here in Eretz Yisrael when the person came from overseas. And so as a result, we want this one witness to come and testify to that effect. So liboy trey, why not require two witnesses? After all, midi dahava akiyum shtaras da'alma. When it comes to confirming the witnesses on any other contract, we require two witnesses to confirm those signatures. So the answer is exactly what we answered yesterday. One witness is sufficient when it comes to dealing with prohibitions, and here we're dealing with a prohibition. But again, yesterday when we had this, we also raised the same problem that we're going to raise right now. When do we say that one witness is believed about whether or not something is good or not good or valid or invalid? That's when you're talking about like a piece of fat and you want to know suffix shel chelev, suffix shel shuman. You're not sure, is it kosher fat or is it not kosher fat? Is it chelev, which is not kosher, or is it shuman, which is kosher? So and there's no basis to say that there's a specific prohibition associated with it. But here, aval hacha is chazek isura de'eshes. We do have to worry that the woman was already considered married. We all knew she was married, and so as a result, in her married state, she's prohibited to any other man. And so as a result, it should take two witnesses Havi davar shebe'erva. So this is something that it relates to immoral relations. Ve'ein davar shebe'erva pachos mishnayim. And the only way you get out of the two witnesses situation, the only way you get out of the prohibition is if you have two witnesses. So again, we have revitalized our question on Rava and said, why don't we need two witnesses? So Bedinhu, actually, if you take a look at what the law really is, the Bikiyum Shtaros Nami Loli Boy, you really don't need two witnesses to establish a contract. To the Reish Lakish, as Reish Lakish says, the Amar Reish Lakish, Eidim Sumim Ala Shtar, Nasu Kamisha Nechkara, Edusan Beveistin, that when you have witnesses on a contract, it is as if the witnesses are here in court confirming their testimony of the contract. And if they're as if they have been examined, and it's only a rabbinic requirement. So biblically, really, once the get is brought here into Israel and given to the wife, you don't need to do any investigation of the signatures on the bottom of the get. But the rabbis are a little concerned about both Gittin and other contracts. But with respect to Gittin, Mishum, the Hacha, Mishum Iguna, Akilu Barabanan. And so while in general, if I were to have a contract that says that, somebody owes me money and I go to confirm it, I need to bring two witnesses. Those two witnesses that I need to bring are only required rabbinically. But biblically, I don't actually really need them. But when it comes to the get, we're going to allow the one person who brought the get to be the witness because we want to make it easier to avoid a situation of aguna. Well, one second, as we said yesterday, hakulahu chumrahu. What do you mean? This is not really a leniency. This is actually a stringency. Because if you in fact have a requirement to have two witnesses, there's no chance that the husband could come and complain about it. Because if you have two witnesses that validate the contract, it's certainly the get is certainly valid, and there's nothing that the husband can do to undo it. So chad, but when you only have one, there's a chance that it can come and be invalidated. And so this highlights the fact that often when you have a kula, it can be in one place, it could end up being a chumrah in somewhere else. But the Gemara answers, no, in this situation, it is really just a kula, because Kavan de Amar Mar Bifnei Kama knows no law. In front of how many witnesses? When the messenger comes to Israel with the get, in front of how many witnesses does he have to give the get? Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yechanina have a disagreement about it. One says it's in front of two, one says it's in front of three. And so as a result, no matter what, it's got to be in front of a bunch of people. And so the messenger is going to want to be absolutely sure that he doesn't get really embarrassed, because it's very embarrassing if he were to say this is a good get, and then the husband comes, testifies that it's not a good get, and it turns out not to be a good get. That would be very embarrassing. So he's going to do some checking. So lo asi la aruye nafshe, because he doesn't want to make himself look bad. He doesn't want himself to be compromised. So all right. So now that we've confirmed why the answer is, so we've revised our understanding of Rabbah and Rava. Really, biblically, everybody agrees that you don't even need a single witness. And Rabbah says you need one witness because we're a little bit concerned about maybe it wasn't written lishma. And Rabbah says, no, we need at least one witness because maybe we won't, because we don't have any witnesses to the signatures. And really, rabbinically, we should have witnesses to the signatures. So now that we've got this dispute, V'Rava my time alo amar karaba. So why don't they say like each other? Meaning, why did Rava not agree to Rabbah, and why did Rabbah not agree to Rava? So that's what the Gemara is going to deal with now. So Amar lach, what would Rava say? Mi katani, b'fanei nechtav lishma, b'fanei nechtam lishma. If you really want to say that it's all lishma, then why don't you have the witness actually use the word lishma? Have him say it was written lishma, and it was in front of me, and it was signed lishma in front of me. So the fact that we don't do that, so that seems to suggest that it's not about Lishma. Now, the Rabbah, how does Rabbah address this? Meaning, why does Rabbah say that that's fine? But dinhu delays nehachi. Really, it shouldn't, it should have taught that. It should have said that you need to say, B'fanei nechtav lishma, u'fanei nechtam lishma. And why didn't it say that? Because Ela de'im mifshat le dibura, because if you make his statement a long one, well, asi lemagazei, he might cut it off. And if he cuts it off and he needs to say the whole thing, well, then that's going to be a problem. And so as a result, we give him very short statements. Well, hashtanami. Well, even the statement of just b'fanei nektam, that is pretty short, but it still could be even shorter. Maybe he'll cut that off. Maybe he'll cut that off. So chad mitlas gaiz, chad mitarte lo gaz. When you have three things in a list, so then it's more likely that somebody is going to cut it off. But when you only have two items in a list, well, then you're not likely to leave out any of them. So that's the Rabbah's explanation. So that is why, from Rabbah's perspective, you would not, the Gemara did not, or the Mishnah, did not suggest that we say b'fanei nektav lishma, b'fanei nektam lishma, even though that might be actually better language. So that's why Rava didn't agree with Rabbah, because it doesn't have a full language. And Rabbah says, well, if we had the full language, we'd be worried about accidentally cutting off things too early. So now we go in the other direction. But Rabbah, my time lo amar Rava. Why didn't Rabbah say like Rava? So amar lach, he'll tell you, im kain nisni b'fanei nechtam b'sulo. You don't need to have all this whole b'fanei nechtav b'fanei nechtam. Just tell me that it was signed in my presence, because all that matters is that it was signed. All he's doing is confirming the signatures. He doesn't need to confirm the writing. B'sulo b'fanei nechtav lamali. Why do I need to say anything about it being written in my presence? So shma mina be'inan lishma. So it must be that the fact that we're talking about both the writing and the signing, it's highlighting that it needs to be lishma. That's the reason that we would talk about both topics. The Rava, and what about Rava? How does he address this question? Why doesn't he agree and say that because we really only need to mention b'fanei nechtam, and now that we mentioned b'fanei nechtav, it shows that it's about lishma and not about just witnessing the signatures. So what would he see? Really, it could have just taught us b'fanei nechtam. All it really needs, that's really all the witness needs to testify about. Ela de'im kain. But we're worried that if we allow the witness to only testify about the signatures, we might think that just as a single witness can be the testifying, confirming person for a get, we would allow a single witness, the one who brings the contract, to be the single witness to testify for other contracts, be'ed echad, with a single witness. But that's not true. We don't allow that. And so as a result, we specifically talk about the writing and the signing so as to not confuse get with other situations. The Rabbah, and why would Rabbah not say that that's a good reason to talk about both the writing and the signing, as opposed to just the signing, if you were to think like Rabbah? So midame, well, no, the cases aren't really comparable, because when it comes to other kinds of contracts, hasam, with respect to other contracts, yadi'inan, if the witnesses say that we know that the signatures are valid, then that would be sufficient. But here we actually have to say it was signed in my presence, meaning it's not just enough to recognize the signatures in the case of a get. You actually have to use the words that it was signed in my presence. That's an extra step. That's an extra thing. And as a result, there won't be confusion. Well, and that's point number one. And point number two is hasam, over there in a regular contract situation, isha lo mehemna, a woman isn't believed. We don't believe women in court cases. They're not allowed to serve as witnesses in a court case about a legal contract. But hacha isha mehemna. But when it comes to a get, the woman is able to say that it was befanai nechtav, befanai nechtam. She can say that. So that's going to be another difference. Hasam bal daber lo mehemen. And also, when it comes to a contract, if you are one of the parties to the contract, you can't be a witness about the signatures. But hacha bal daber mehemen. But when it comes to a get, if the woman herself comes and confirms that those signatures were signed properly, that is going to be sufficient. So for all those reasons, there's a big difference between a get and another kind of contract. And so as a result, from Rabba's perspective, because of those differences, if all you were trying to do was say that it was signed in front of you, all you need to do is say befanai nechtam. You don't need befanai nechtam. So it must be befanai nechtam teaches us that it's all about lishma and not about the signatures. The Rava Amarlach, and what would Rava say back to you? Why does he say that it's okay to say that it's not, that it's really about the signatures, even though we talk about that it was written in front of me? He'd say to you, Atu Haga. No, the problem is that again, this is one of the big differences that you highlighted, namely the fact that it's sufficient in connection with a regular contract to say yadinan, whereas with respect to a get, you have to say befanai nechtam. There's a big difference, because actually there's no difference. I mean, I apologize. So even though Rabbah said that there was a big difference, because when it comes to a regular contract saying we know that these signatures are valid because we recognize the signatures, that's sufficient. But when it comes to a get, you have to say it was signed in front of me. But Rabbah disagrees with that. He says that even if you were to say we know these signatures, that is sufficient. Right? Because ki amri yadinan mi lo mahemni. If the person were to say that he recognizes the signatures, wouldn't they be believed? And again, Rashi explains here that it's talking about a situation where the messenger is saying not befanai nechtam, but just befanai that I know these signatures, and Rava says that that's sufficient. But kevan dechi amri yadinan mehemni, and since if they were to say that they know that the signatures are valid, they would be believed. If we allow them to just say befanai nechtam that it was signed in front of me, people might confuse a regular contract with a get and think be'ed echad, and think that one witness is sufficient for other kinds of contracts as well. Ula Rabba de Amar. Okay. All right, so now that so we've now gone through and we've confirmed the two viewpoints. We understand why Rava says like Rava and Rabba says like Rabba, and why they don't agree with the other viewpoint. And so now, let's take a look. And so now we're going to, you know what? And let's take a look at this. At the last second to last Rashi on the page, that Atu Hacha ki Amar Yodeya Ani Milo Mehemen, right? So this is Rava's response. Hoel Uldidei Taima, because according to Rava, the reason is Mishum Kiyumahu, that we're just trying to establish that it's a valid contract. I Amar Yodeya Ani Bechasimas Yadei Ha'edim. If the witness who came and brought the contract were to come and say, I recognize the signatures of the witnesses on the get, Milo Mehemen, wouldn't they be believed? Wouldn't the person be believed? Demali Bifanai, why do I care about whether or not it was written in front of me? Mali Yodeya. Why do I, or if I know the signatures? Either of them is sufficient. Yodeya Ani. B'kevan dahachihu, and since that's the case, if we don't also require the witness who's coming and bringing the get to also talk about the writing, the tihavi heker being Gittin l'shtaros, so that there will be a difference between a regular a get and a regular contract, asi le'ichalufe b'kiyum shtaros. People might get confused when it comes to establishing contracts, the alma of the rest of the regular contracts. L'kaimenu be'ed echad, to think that one witness is sufficient. So okay, so now that we've got this down and we understand why the two opinions don't say like each other, we're going to take a deeper dive into Rabbah. Because what does Rabbah say? Rabbah says that we need to say befanei nechtav ubefani nechtam, because we need lishma. Well, that implies that lishma is needed both with respect to the writing and with respect to the signing. But now we're going to ask, who is it? What Tana actually requires both the signing and the writing to be lishma, to be done specifically for the woman? And let's take a look. Because that the concern is because we're worried that people aren't keeping in mind that the contract has to be for this woman, the get has to be for this woman. Man Tana. Who is the Tana of our Mishnah? Debai ksiva lishma, ubai, as we turn to Gimel Amabet, ubai chasima lishma, right? Who is it that requires both the writing to be for this woman and the signing to be for this woman? And there's a machlokas that we have between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar, and it seems like that the opinion that you requires both the signing and the writing to be lishma doesn't go like either of them, because Rabbi Meir, if you want to say it's Rabbi Meir, what does he require? He requires chasima by. He requires the signing to be lishma, ksiva lo by, but he doesn't require the ksiva to be lishma. Because how do we know that that's the case? Because Gittin, take a look at this opinion from a Mishnah. The Mishnah has no attribution, and we say that an unattributed Mishnah, a stam Mishnah, is Rabbi Meir. So let's take a look. And what does the Mishnah say? This is a Mishnah on Daf Pei Vav, I believe. And so let's take a look and see what it says. So what does the Mishnah say? Ein kosvin b'mechubar, that you can't write on something that's attached to the ground. Meaning, if you have a big leaf, those bushes that have those really big leaves. So you imagine somebody writes the get for his wife on one of those really big leaves. So ksavo al hamechubar lakarka. So you can't write something on it that's attached to the ground. But if you did, and you wrote it on it when it was attached to the ground, and tulasho, and then you attached it, chasamo, and then you had it signed, unasan no, and then you gave it, and then he gave it, la to her, kasher, that's going to be kosher. So Rashi explains, right? Rabbi Meir de Amar Iker Hashtar Zuhi Chasima, so that when Rabbi Meir is the one who says that the main aspect of a shtar is its signing, and Chasima lishma. But you need to have the signing be lishma specifically for her. The kiksiv because of law, when the Torah wrote because of law in Sefer Dvarim, it's talking about achasima. It's referring to the signing sieve that it was talking about. As we'll learn coming up on Daf Kaf Aleph Amabet. So kasav get ala mechubar kasher. And so as a result, if you were to write a get on something that's attached to the ground, it'll be kosher. V'avagaf the ksiv because of the nasan, even though it says that you should write and you should give it, misha eino mechusar ela ksiva v'nesina yatsa zeh shehu mechusar ksiva katzitza v'nesina. Right? We say that when it says that you need to have the writing and the giving, it teaches us that there can't be any separation between the writing of the get and the giving of the get. So there can't be writing, cutting, and giving. So afilu hachi kaven dechasmu betolish. However, when in fact the signing is done after it has been separated, makshirlei, it makes it all kosher. So makshirlei Rabbi Meir says it's kosher. Alma because of dekra achasime lahu. So when it said katav, because of law in the pasuk, it's referring to the signing. It's not referring to the writing. And so it's clear that according to Rabbi Meir, yes, you need chasima lishma, but you don't need ksiva lishma. So that's point number one. So Rabbi Elazar, ksiva by, chasima lo by. And on the other hand, if you want to say that it's Rabbi Elazar, he's the one who requires writing. He doesn't care about the signing. So we're going to have four possible solutions to this problem, and we'll go through all four solutions, and then we'll be done for today. So solution number one is maybe it's really Rabbi Elazar. midaoraisa. And the fact that, yes, it is true that he does not require that there be signing specifically for this woman. That's only biblically. Midurabanan by, but when it comes to a rabbinic requirement, the rabbis say that in fact you do have to have even the chasima be lishma. V'hashlosha gittin. But that can't be because v'hashlosha gittin psulin derabanan, because there are three types of gittin that are invalid according to the rabbis. V'lo by Rabbi Lazar chasima lishma, and Rabbi Lazar disagrees and says that actually one of them is not a problem when it comes to a rabbinic level. And as we see in the following Mishnah, Ditnan, we have this Mishnah, which is on this is the Mishnah on Pei Vav Amud Aleph. So this Mishnah says the following. So let's take a look. The earlier Mishnah is on Kaf Aleph Amud Bet. So this is now on Pei Vav Amud Bet. So Pei Vav Amud Aleph, excuse me. So this Mishnah on Pei Vav Amud Aleph says the following. Gimel, Gittin, Psulin. There are three kinds of Gittin that are puzzle. The imnisas havlad kasher. But if the woman used that get to get married to a new husband, and she has children with that new husband, even though when you use a biblically invalid get, the children then become mamzerim, they become illegitimate. Here, in this situation, because really the Gittin are kosher from the Torah, it's only rabbinically that we're going to say they're prohibited. If she gets married and has a child, the child is still a kosher child. So what are the three situations? Situation number one, kasav b'chsav yado ve'ein alav edim. If the husband writes the entire get and there are no signatures at the bottom, so that's situation number one. Situation number two, yesh alav edim. There are witnesses ve'ein bozman, but the get itself doesn't have a date on it. Or yesh bozman ve'ein bo ela eid achad. Or if there is a date on it, but there's only one witness on the contract. All three situations, hare elu shlosha gittin psulin. All three of these are puzzle, the imnisas havlad kasher. But if in fact she gets married, the child is kosher. So that's the Tanakama position. And now Rabbi Lazar comes and disagrees. Rabbi Lazar Omer av al pisha ein alav edim. When in fact, if there are no witnesses on it, elashin nisano but the husband gives it to her in front of witnesses, kasher, then the whole thing is kosher, even midrabanan. And not only that, she can use that get to collect from property that's encumbered. Because the whole reason that we have witnesses sign on the get is only for the benefit of society, to make things a lot easier and to make things work more smoothly. So that's explanation number one. We've rejected. We thought maybe we could say it's Rabbi Meir. We cannot say it's Rabbi Meir. Maybe it's Rabbi Elazar. We cannot say it's Rabbi Elazar. The Ella Rabbi Meir, well, all right, so maybe it's Rabbi Meir. And V'chi lo boy Rabbi Meir ksiva lishma and midoraisa. And when we said that Rabbi Meir only requires the chasima, and he doesn't require the ksiva to be lishma, maybe the ksiva doesn't have to be lishma midoraisa, but midirabanan boy, but he would need it to be rabbinically required. And so as a result, that's why our Mishnah says, emphasizes both the ksiva and the chasima. But that's also a problem, because v'ha'amar Rav Nachman, we have a statement by Rav Nachman, Omer haya Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir would say, afilu matza'o ba'ashpa, even if you find a get in the trash can, if it happens to have the right names on it, even though it wasn't written for this particular woman and this particular man, if the husband now gets that get signed and gives it to his wife, kasher, it's all kosher. Now, if you say that in fact Rabbi Meir requires this only from a biblical perspective and from a rabbinic perspective, it would not be good. Omer haya Rabbi Meir davar Torah mi baile. Then he would say that this is this is only when it comes to the biblical law that it's kosher. The fact that Rabbi Nachman doesn't qualify his statement implies that even if it was rabbinic, even according to the rabbis, it would be okay to use this garbage this get that came from the garbage, because all that you need is valid signatures. And here it would have valid signatures. So, all right, so we've tried twice. We said it was Rebbe Lazar and we rejected it. Then we said it's Rebbe Meir and we rejected it. Now we're going to go back to Rebbe Lazar and we're going to say, actually, it could be Rebbe Lazar. So how do we make that happen? So the following, we're going to see. We're going to get there in a moment. So El Olam Rebbe Lazar, really it is Rebbe Lazar. Vilchi lo boy Elazar Chasima. Lo boy Rebbe Lazar Chasima. Well, 1 second. I thought you were very clear that when it comes to Rabbi Lazar, that he doesn't require signatures at all, because that if the husband just wrote the document, didn't have anybody sign on it, and gave it, it would be a valid contract. So when he says that Hecha deleka edim klal, that is true when there are no witnesses on the document at all. But Hecha de ika edim by. But when there are witnesses on the document, then those witnesses do need to sign lishma. They have to sign with the right intention of having it for this get before this particular woman. Dama Rabbi Abba, because Rabbi Abba said, Moda Rabbi Lazar, b'mezuyev mitocho shehu pasul, that when it comes to a document that on its face is problematic, then, based on its face is problematic, that is where then even Rabbi Lazar will agree that contract is pasul. That get is pasul. And so, if in fact there were no witnesses on this get, it would be totally fine for the guy to come and just give the get. But because there are witnesses on it, so now we have to have the agent who has brought the get from Medinas Hayam, he needs to say b'fanai nechtav or b'fanai nechtam. So that's answer number 1, and that's a possible answer. So it could be Rebbe Lazar. Now we're going to give answer number 2, and with that we'll conclude. Valid answer number 2. This is really answer number 4, the fourth possibility. Rav Ashi Amar Hamani. Who is it? Rebbe Yehuda. It really is Rebbe Yehuda. D'Tanan. Rebbe Yehuda posel so betalish, until you actually write and sign the document when it's detached from the ground, meaning both the writing and the signing need to be lishma. So as a result, that's who our opinion is. And so that fits very nicely, right? Because what did we say in our Mishnah? We had to say that it has to be written in front of me and it has to be signed in front of me. So it fits beautifully with Rabbi Yehuda. Well, in that case, my time alone, Rabbi Yehuda. Why didn't we start with this? Rabbi Yehuda fits so nicely. So Mahadrinan on Rabbi Meir. We started first with Rabbi Meir, just Damas and Rabbi Meir, because we wanted to try to do it with Rabbi Meir because he is an anonymous Mishnah. In Mahadirinan Rabbi Elazar, and we tried Rabbi Elazar to kaimalan hilchasa kavase begit, because in general the halacha is like him when it comes to Gittin, and so as a result, that is why we are going to be more specific in this particular situation. So, all right. So now that we've got all that, so now we are ready, that we fully analyzed the views of Rabbah and Rava with respect to why the messenger must say it was written in my presence and it was signed in my presence. So now the Gemara is ready to consider whether their dispute aligns with a dispute among Tanaim. But for that, you're going to need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. So stay tuned for tomorrow's daf, and I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Have a fabulous day.
Okay. Yeah.